Welcome to the Legends Behind the Craft podcast, where we feature top leaders in the wine and craft beverage industry with your host, Drew Hendricks. Now, let's get started with the show.
Drew Hendricks here. I'm the host of the Legends Behind the Craft podcast, where I talk with leaders in the wine and craft beverage industry, from tech companies that enable wineries to run at optimum efficiency to today's guest, Megan Rounds of Rounds Design, who helps businesses create magnetic brand identities that have lasting impact. Today's episode, it's sponsored by Barrels Ahead. At Barrels Ahead, we know that your business is unique, and we work with you to implement a one-of-a-kind content strategy, one that highlights your authenticity, tells your story, and makes your business stand out from your competitors. So Megan, in short, we unlock your brand's story to unleash your revenue. Go to barrelsahead.com today to learn more. Before I introduce today's guest, I want to give a big thank you to last week's guest, Ashley Dubois-Leonard of Innovent. Ashley and I talked about her journey from winemaker to technologist, and Ashley gave some great advice about the importance of being open to the unexpected in your career journey. For today's guest, I have Megan Rounds, founder of Round Designs. Now, I'm a huge fan of Megan's work and could not wait to have her on the show. Megan and I, we've worked together on several branding projects over the years, including one of my own. And what impresses me most about her is her design process. She goes deep into extracting a brand's DNA, and the designs show it. And her work in the beverage industry is simply amazing. And I think it's because her roots run deep. Megan grew up on a family winery in the Santa Cruz Mountains and even wrote her master's thesis on winery branding and label design. Megan's passion for creating meaningful brand identities has enabled businesses across the board, from small grassroots nonprofits to Fortune 500 companies, realize true brand value. Welcome to the show, Megan.
You make me sound great.
Oh no, you are great. It was. I had to whittle down your highlights.
Oh, thank you.
So tell us about yourself and your company.
So, like you said, my name is Megan Rounds, and I have been a designer for over 25 years now. Hard to believe. I got my start in San Diego. After my undergraduate degree in Santa Cruz, I moved to San Diego and had a bunch of random jobs. I was actually working at a temp agency doing admin, and on my breaks, I would wander around the big office floor. Mm-hmm. And I saw this one office where his door was always shut. And one time it was open, and there were bookshelves of just communication art magazines, and he had a Mac in there and, cutting stuff and pens and paper. And I thought, wow, what does this man do? Mm-hmm. So I started talking to him, and he told me he was a graphic designer and he was the creative director for the company. And it was love at first sight. I really had no idea what that meant specifically, but I just knew I loved his office. I loved the vibe. I loved everything I saw in it. I loved the magazines. And I said, how can I do this? And I introduced myself and I said, I'm a temp. I'm actually working in admin down the hall. And he said, well, we're doing a photo shoot tomorrow, a big Chevrolet products photo shoot. And I could use an assistant. And I went, awesome, I'm your assistant. Oh, and man. So we went through the process of getting me from the admin job I was doing to him. So the next day I showed up, I think it was Balboa Park, and I went and picked up the coffee. I brought it. The model had to use my belt at one point. And then he said, that's great. Thanks for coming. I said, no, you don't understand. Like, I'm doing this forever. So he said, well, come back the next day when we wrap up. And then after that, it was one thing led to another. I went to the photographer's studio and we reviewed the proofs. The proofs came back then. It was zip drives.
Oh yeah.
So they all came over from zip drives, and I sat down with Jim McConnell, who is my first mentor. And we went through everything. And he gave me a loop, and he said, now I want you to tell me which photos we should pick and why. And that was it. We got a lone Mac to come in his office. I put a little table on the side wall, and we had a little rental Mac for me. And I've never been in another field since. I just kind of weaseled my way in.
That's amazing. So your original undergraduate background wasn't in design?
No, it was in sociology. Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, I really didn't. I mean, I went into college as a marine biology major at UC Santa Cruz, have a fascination with the ocean. Mm-hmm. And I thought I would do that. And then I realized I just had this angst. I had to get out in the world and wanted to travel. So I picked a major that I thought was relevant, but also I knew I could do quickly and not have to do OChem. And so I took summer school and I got my degree in 3 years and then just traveled for a couple of years and ended up in San Diego. And that's how I became a designer.
That's amazing. And I bet you that background in sociology has really helped you with your brand site.
It's a very relevant degree. I think that, no matter what you do in life, understanding societies and people and movements is just important and relevant. So yes, of course.
Yeah, that's a good advice to those that are in college right now. Yeah. Because you may not pursue something that interests you, that you feel that is going to help you in your broad life, and then let the specifics, such as how you're going to actually enact that, unfold.
Life is fluid. And I think if you're true to yourself and follow your heart, and you'll find your path, and the journey is ever changing.
Wow. So Jim McConnell was
Jim McConlog, yes. And he is an amazing fine art painter. I actually am a proud owner of one of his paintings that I bought before I moved from San Diego. So not only was he the creative director at this company, but his passion was painting. So yeah.
That's fantastic. Did he give you any specific piece of advice that you've taken with you?
The funniest thing, that first day, I said, I just want to learn everything from you. And he told me that he was not a good teacher, that he would not know how to teach me how to be a designer. And I thought, well, I'm still going to absorb everything this man can teach me. And that was really important for me because I had to find my own path, but I also had to learn how to extract everything he knew to help guide me.
Sure.
Yeah. Sure.
It's that experiential thing in design that you really can't teach. You've got to actually do.
You do have to do it. And of course, like any discipline, there's fundamentals and theories and history, and all of that helps to build a foundation. But each designer is unique in his or her process and journey. And
now you've been in design for 25 years. You already experienced a tremendous amount of success before you went back and got a master's to give so you actually experienced tremendous success, then circled back and got a formal degree in design, didn't you?
I did. So after my San Diego journey, working with Jim, I did that for a couple of years. And during the time I thought, well, how can I formalize this education? So I went back to UC San Diego and got a professional certificate in digital and graphic design. That was an 18-month program where I worked all day in the field and then went to the classes at night. Everything from photography to drawing to the beginning of, Photoshop and Illustrator. And it was before InDesign. It was when we used Quark. And so I went back and kind of formalized that and worked my way through several different agencies in San Diego. Was part of the San Diego chapter of the AIGA, mentored some San Diego State students, and had a wonderful career there. It was just an amazing place to get started in the field. And then while living there, I wanted to take it to the next level and just thought, how can I do this? And it was, the late 2000 or 2000. What year did I start? 2008, I think. I started my MFA, and one of the only schools that offered an online program because I was working full time. So I could not give up my career to move to Michigan or New York or any place. I wanted to be a practical designer.
Okay.
And so I kept working and pursued my master's degree at the same time.
Now from the time before you got the master's to the after, what did the master's give you? Like
so it really did teach me so many things. Of course, like we talked about, this is an applied career, an applied field. So you go in with your trade, but it gives you a foundation and a confidence, and knowing the history, that there's a real history of design, how it started, and typography and movements, and how design inspired movements throughout the world, and how movements have inspired design. And then also there's the applied part of it, where you have to know how to use the software. So there's classes on that. There's classes on theories and proportion and scale and photography and art. So all of those things I had a passion for, but the degree, which did take me over 7 years to earn,
amazing,
because I was working and because I had children, and I moved across the country twice, and I married a Marine.
And it was a heck of a lot of work.
Yeah. So full-time, it's a 3-year program where I went, and it took me twice that, but it really gave me a confidence. I would say that's, that I'm in the right field for me. And now I have the education and the understanding to kind of back it up.
That's great. And it provided that structure that now you can actually see apply all the things that you've learned experientially through working and doing design, and actually know where they fit into that ecosystem.
Yes. Yeah. It was a turning point for me personally too, just to prove to myself I can do this really hard thing.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
So before we go, I definitely want to dive into your branding process, because I've seen it firsthand. We had you develop our logo for Nimbletoad, which is my other agency down here in San Diego, where we have many clients spanning law firms to golf courses to a lot of physical therapy and mental therapy offices. But you helped us just pinpoint the exact brand direction to go with that. So again, thank you.
Well,
and I got to say, it was an intense branding process. We do branding internally here, but we don't go nearly as deep as you did. Walk us through what you put me through.
So just in a nutshell, for me, giving life to a brand is kind of like birthing a child. And I've done it. I've done the physical act of birthing a child twice. It's not easy. And it's the same thing. So when I first start with a company or a person, I get to know them. I have a set list of questions I asked, and they're based on experience just over the years of what I know I'm going to need to understand in order to extract the essence of the company or the person. So I'll send the client a list of questions, everything from who are you to who do you not want to be? Where do you see yourself? Where do you see your company? Aesthetic questions, what color absolutely do you just not like for whatever reason? It doesn't matter. What brands are you drawn to for their messaging or their look and feel? It doesn't have to relate to what your business is specifically. To who is your competition? And I think that's one of the most important questions I ask. Who is your competition, and how do they do things differently than you? And how do we not want to be like them? How do we want to set you apart? And through all of that information, I do my research, and the initial brand process for me is about 2 weeks from when I get the questions back. And sometimes I walk through them with the client over the phone. And a lot of times I don't have to, because they really do pull the essence of what I need to know right from the client. And so then I start my research, competition, all of your inspiration I look up, and I just start gathering a library of ideas. And then my first round of designs come 2 weeks later, usually. So it's pretty in-depth, and it happens fast. Actually, it's pretty amazing to me how quickly it does happen, because the client will get the first round of designs and say, wow, I'm really drawn to number 1, but I don't like number 7 because of this. But number 8's intriguing because of this. Can we somehow combine 1, 8, and 9? And
you do give a lot of breadth in your design samples.
I do. because I've often found that a client already knows who they are, but they don't know how to relay that information. So it takes seeing something visual to say, oh, wow, that is where I wanted to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, usually like with a lot of, I've worked with a lot of designers, and a lot of their approach to logos is they do ask some of the discovery questions, but more of it's more on what do you like, what kind of other logos do you like, what's your favorite colors and that type of stuff. But what sets you apart that I found is you went deep like a copywriter would go on writing an about us page with the full content, and then you translate that content into a visual design.
Well, thank you for that. I do. Hopefully the brand is relevant and it stands the test of time. And if you find something that's just, or create something that's just purely aesthetic with no depth or meaning, it's not going to stand the test of time, and it's going to change as you change and as your business change. But if you can really extract that meaning, usually there's substance and it's relevant and lasting.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so you've got your process, and you've got you're skilled in design, but there's one other aspect to your background that makes you uniquely suited to the wine and craft industry, and that you grew up on a family farm or a family winery in the Santa Cruz Mountains.
Yeah. So actually I was in college before my parents decided to launch that endeavor.
Well,
yeah, but I spent lots of time there, planted the first grapes. We harvested. My children have harvested there. My husband's harvested. It's sad they don't own it anymore. It's a lot of work, a tremendous amount of work, dedication, time, energy, money, you name it, but very rewarding. The wine that my parents created was served at our wedding, and
awesome.
Yeah, so it's a very worthwhile love of a craft type of business.
So you bring that hands-on experience of having actually been there, done that into those designs. And I know you recently worked with a brewing company up in Kalispell, Sunroof Brewing.
I did. They're very fun client. Once again, they knew who they wanted to be. The owner of the brewery actually was a brewer for other breweries before. So when he settled in Kalispell, he knew exactly the direction and the thought for his brand. And he had a love for, surfing in the water and that California vibe, but he was going to be in Kalispell. So we had to find a way to kind of merge the identities and make it hip and fun and stand out in the world of craft breweries, which is pretty flooded.
There's a lot of them out there. What was some of the biggest challenges there on that project?
Let's see. Well, the design itself was pretty intricate. So, the process was great. I think that they just had to ultimately decide which direction. There were two competing directions, and one was it had like the more traditional kind of a traditional feel. And this was more light and airy. And once we decided on this particular logo, it then became, he wanted to have metal work done, and they have a huge woodworking sign in their lobby. And so it's a pretty intricate with sun and water. So we had to find a way, or I had to find a way to make sure that the artwork was perfect and could be recreated using many different mediums. So that's not always easy to do if you think about some intricate, unless it's a Nike swoosh, there can be a lot of intricacies within a design. So making it translate to all different types of, mediums is another technical challenge sometimes.
I can bet that would be a huge challenge, especially because a lot of logos, a lot of designers don't take that approach, that this logo will also maybe have to live in metalwork, wood burning. I mean, it needs to have many different iterations.
It does. And we used gradients of color. So you think about, how does that translate to black and white? How does that translate when it needs to be 1 inch small? So these are all just things that you learn over time. No one can teach you except through experience, really. So that was a challenge, but it was a wonderful challenge. I love their logo. I've been to their brewery. They now have a restaurant. They
Oh,
do
wow.
live music. It's super fun. Yeah, it's a great place.
Oh, that's great. And that's a good tip to anybody looking to found a winery, brewery, or craft distillery. Think about how your logo is going to be used. Don't just jump on the first one that may only look good on the label.
That's so true. Yep. Longevity.
Yeah. What other advice could you give a winery or craft beverage company that's struggling to kind of reinvent itself or just invent itself?
Well, I mean, I really don't see the difference from being a high-tech company to a brewery to a salon. I think what's going to set you apart is, are you really being true to what your brand is and what your vision is for your business and where you see yourself taking your business? What's going to set you apart not only is the quality of your product, but also, are you using the same illustrator as the person down the street to make cute little posters, or are you really unique? And what's going to make you stand out against your competition? So that would be something I'd say is, do your research and don't just buy the first logo you see for $200. Really invest in being true to what you want to be for a business, and people will follow you. People will love it. People will appreciate the integrity of your product and the design that, is branding you.
That's great advice, because too often the first thing you look at is not the thing that has the lasting impression. It's that shiny object. And the trouble of going through a rebrand, once you realize that that's not something that's actually you, is twice as hard than doing it right the first time.
It's twice as hard. And I tell that to clients all the time, because not only have you established clientele with your first brand, but now you have to kind of break that and reinvent yourself, and not only hopefully keep that clientele, but grab a whole new audience. So it's better to do it right the first time.
Oh, absolutely. Now that we were talking in the pre-show about how the world's just changing so quickly. It's hard to keep pace with it. What advice would you give someone just starting out in their design career in this current state of the world?
Mm-hmm. Well, have grit. I read that book recently. It was really good. In 25 years, you can only imagine we did, you've been in the field, from zip drives to, oh my gosh, jazz drives. Now we could hold a ton more on a big disk. To couriers. Couriers were a huge thing. We needed couriers every day to run our files back and forth. Paste ups, and our X-Acto knives. We were cutting film. Our ads. Everything was so different. We used our pen and pencil a lot. We actually took the time to draw. You needed that skill. You needed to be able to draw. And that would be something I would give to up and coming designers, is to not be married to your particular vision of using one thing. Like, you're not going to design. You don't just design on a computer. Who knows what it'll be in 3 years, 5 years. Make sure your skills are strong and solid. Make sure you can draw for sure. And just be open to change, because this industry changes so quickly. There was no such thing really as web design or social media ads. That was just not even a thing 25 years ago. So
the mediums are changing so fast. But the one thing that and maybe you might disagree, but I say the principles have stayed the same. I look back at some of those design books that were done in the 40s and 50s, and those principles are just as relevant today, just for different mediums.
Absolutely. Yeah. Know your fundamentals, know your skills. Yeah, definitely. We studied those in school. So that'll never change. Because, the Gestalt theory and proportion and balance and the golden triangle and all of that. It's very relevant.
Rule of thirds still rules.
Absolutely. In photography and design. So yep. 100%. Be solid in your craft, and don't be married to just, I can't tell you how many, and you too, how many different software programs we've had to learn over the years.
There is a new app or a new platform every single day.
And it's always the best new great thing. So I don't know. Yeah.
So maybe that what and I like the way you said it, be solid in your craft and fluid in your medium.
Yeah, for sure. Be open. Don't be rigid, be open.
Oh, that's great advice. So as we're wrapping up here, what are some of the favorite books you've been reading lately?
Well, I've been reading like a ton and audiobooks like crazy during this past year. And like I mentioned, grit. I've really appreciated hearing people's passions and what gets them through and what they've learned in life and what sets them apart. I also enjoy just reading, fiction. I just finished Small Great Things by Jodi Picoult, which was a very intense and moving book, and so many books. And I keep my own little personal, rating sheet, my book reviews. And it's fun to go back and see just how much I've read and have allowed my brain to get lost in someone else's world.
I think that's good. That's what you do for us in your branding.
Yeah. It's funny when you talk about my process, and I end up saying this to most all of my clients. I dream about the brand. And so for me, it's not 9 to 5. I don't sit at my computer 9 to 5 and work. It's not realistic. The brand usually comes to me in some very abstract way, dreaming or walking or grocery shopping. So yeah.
Well, that's where inspiration strikes.
Yeah, that is. I think so.
In the bread aisle.
Yeah, the bread aisle.
Oh, Megan, it's been great talking with you.
Yeah,
where can people learn about you and your company?
www.roundsdesign.com. That's where I'm at.
Awesome.
You've reminded me I need to update it too. I've been terrible. See, I'm not very good at updating my own stuff. So forgive me, people out there.
Oh, you're in good company. I think agencies are notorious. It's the cobbler's shoes.
I know it is. It is. That is very true. I'll help you do yours, but man, don't get me to sit down and do mine. It takes too much time.
We get it.
Yeah. Thank you, Drew. This has been awesome.
Oh, thank you so much for being on the show. This was great.
Yeah. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Legends Behind the Craft podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.